John Ulzheimer is known as one of our nation's most recognized credit experts. Having worked for 28 years in the credit industry, John has become one of the most prolific speakers about credit and the go-to authority on answers to credit-related questions. Credit Countdown with John Ulzheimer.
Hello, my name is John Ulzheimer. I am a consumer credit expert. I have been in the credit industry for almost 30 years now. I've spent time at Equifax, which is one of the 3 generally recognized credit reporting agencies in the US, and I've spent time at FICO. And FICO is, of course, the company that is behind the FICO credit scoring system. So today we're going to talk about divorce and credit and divorce. How do the two kind of interplay with each other? So what we need to talk about first off is joint liabilities, because that's really what is at issue in a divorce with respect to your credit reports and credit scores, is joint liabilities. So you may have an account or some sort of a debt with another person, and you may be listed as a joint account holder, a co-signer, a co-obligor. These all mean the same thing, meaning that there are 2 people who are liable for one debt. So you may see these types of terms floating around the internet or in documents, but they really all mean the same thing, which is that you're liable and someone else with whom you don't want to be married to any longer is also liable. So then the process of divorce, of course, is a legal process where the 2 parties get together and they agree to certain responsibilities after the marriage ends. And one of those responsibilities is who's going to pay for our joint debts, if there are any. Obviously, if you have no joint debts, then it makes the process infinitely easier because there's nothing to divide and there's no assignment of payments that needs to be made. But if you have a joint mortgage, if you have joint car loans, if you have joint credit card debt, then obviously that's stuff that is going to need to be dealt with. And so here's the question that I often get. Well, I divorced my husband. Does that mean I have to pay the credit card any longer? Are you a co-signer on the credit card, or are you listed as a joint account holder? Yes. Well, of course you do. The divorce does not supersede the agreement that you have with your lender, meaning that the divorce doesn't somehow wipe out your agreement with your lender. The lender, I promise you this, when you're going through the divorce with your spouse, the lender isn't also involved, and the lender isn't saying, yeah, we'll agree to only hold you liable and not both of you liable. It doesn't work that way. Whatever arrangement you had with your lender when you took out the debt stays in place even after your divorce. Now, you may agree with your ex-spouse that he or she is going to make certain payments on debts and that you'll make other payments on debts, even if they're joint debts. But ultimately, the bank still believes both of you are liable. So your divorce decree, which essentially kind of codifies that agreement that you have with your soon-to-be ex-spouse, that particular divorce decree is perfectly fine and valuable all the way up until it comes to dividing debts. I'll tell you this, it is a whole lot easier to divorce your spouse than it is to divorce your bank, because the bank isn't just going to simply say, okay, you don't have to make this payment because you're no longer married to this other person. It doesn't generally work that way. So let's talk about an example. So let's just say hypothetically that you and your spouse have a $100,000 mortgage and you get divorced. Well, guess what? You and your spouse still have a $100,000 mortgage. But obviously, one of the 2 of you is going to have to continue to make payments on this, just like you were making payments on it before you got divorced. And the process of divorce doesn't somehow cut this in half and then, makes you liable for 50% and makes your spouse liable for 50%. It doesn't work like that. You're both equally liable for the full amount, although maybe only I will be responsible for paying the loan or paying the bill every single month on this loan, where you may be responsible for other things that I also might be liable for. But this divorce decree is essentially assigned payment responsibility to continue to pay certain debts. So on your credit report does not show that you are now divorced. Your credit report never showed that you were married to begin with. It just showed that you are you and you have all these liabilities. There is no such thing as a married credit report or a joint credit report. There are some companies that may combine them cosmetically after they're pulled from the credit bureaus, But at Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, your credit reports are all stored at the individual consumer level, not at the family level or marriage or spousal level. It doesn't work like that. So even after you're divorced, you're still gonna have that debt on your credit report. So here's the important part. Even though you're now divorced from your prior spouse, you don't talk to them any longer. There may not even be you're basically, you've disconnected yourself from them in every single way possible except for this debt, okay? So one of the two of you has to continue to make payments on this every single month. If you do not continue to make payments on it, then every bad thing that would normally happen if you were still married is going to happen now that you're divorced. Late payments are going to appear on both of your credit reports. This is a home loan, so this home loan could go into default. It could go through the foreclosure process, and all that stuff can be recorded on both of your credit reports because you have joint liability. Now, obviously, because the divorce decree assigned responsibility to one party or the other, you could certainly sue the other party for not holding you harmless and living up to their end of the divorce decree bargain. But that's yet another legal maneuver, and now you're back involved with your ex-spouse again. So I always advise people to never get into joint debt with anybody ever, even if it's a spouse. Really, the only time you need to co-sign for a loan is when you need two incomes to qualify. And really, the only time you ever need two incomes to qualify is if you're buying a house. You don't need two incomes to qualify for a credit card. You don't need two incomes to qualify for a car. If you do, then you're buying too expensive of a car and you need to buy a cheaper car. It's that simple. Finance 101, right? But buying a house, if you need a pretty large mortgage, you may need two incomes. And so that may be the only scenario where you jointly apply. Well, in that scenario, it might be better just to sell the house, divide the proceeds, and then you don't have this joint debt that's kind of hanging over your head for however many years it takes before the house is eventually sold or paid off, and then there is no debt any longer. So again, if you're going through the process of divorce, either congratulations or I'm terribly sorry, but you are still liable for all of your debts regardless of what your divorce decree says. If you have any questions about this, please leave them in the comment section below and I'll do my best to get to them. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day.
For more videos and credit tips from John Ulzheimer, go to www.tradelinesupply.com.